So welcome to our second episode of our second series of TD workshops. I'm Alicia Stubbs. Unfortunately, my video is not working. I'm the Senior Manager of Family Engagement and Advocacy with Easter Seals Ontario. And I'm so excited to help facilitate our TD Workshop series. So TD Workshop has partnered with Easter Seals Canada to begin a pilot project to increase financial literacy options for folks through Easter Seals. And so we're very grateful for their support and the ability to host really great webinars with lots of informative professionals to start conversations, to answer some questions, and to help with some tools and next steps for any specific questions that folks might have. With that, I am very happy to introduce our speaker today from Passport Canada, Aaron Weinroth. And so with that, I will pass it to you. I will note that if folks have any questions, to feel free to message me directly in the chat. I'll leave it to Erin to kind of outline her preference around questions either during the presentation or after, but please do note that it is recorded. At the end, after the recording has finished, we'll ensure to have a bit of time too for Q&A if your preference is to not have your question as part of the recording. And with that, I will pass it over to you, Erin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am going to share my screen, just so you know, it does take a second for it to pop up for some reason. So if someone can let me know if they can see it, I'll know to start. Everybody good?
Looks good. I can see it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to start with the slides. All right, so I am here to talk to you about passport funding. Just need to get rid of this little thing I have on the corner of my screen. There we go. So what is passport funding? Oh, and just if you have questions, please feel free to shout them out, interrupt me. I just find that works best. That way you're not trying to remember what the question was, and I've long passed it. So passport funding is a program that helps adults with a developmental disability participate in their communities and helps caregivers take a break from their caregiving responsibilities. It's funded by the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services, and it helps to foster social, emotional, and community participation skills, promotes continuing education and personal development, promotes independence, and gives respite to caregivers. So how do you apply for passport funding? So all funded services in Ontario fall under Developmental Services Ontario, and you'll often hear them called as the DSO. You can apply for their services at 16 and then be eligible for services at 18 because it's for adults. So once a person turns 18, then you would contact the DSO and ask them to make a referral for passport funding. And I have the DSO's phone number there just in case you need it. So passport funding is a reimbursement program. You're not given the funds up front. It's not an income program, so you don't need to claim it on your taxes. It runs on a fiscal basis from April 1st to March 31st, and the funds stay within the fiscal year. We're not able to carry the funds over from one fiscal year to another. So if you have leftover funds at the end of the year and you haven't used them, then they just get lost and the new amount will start on April 1st. There's no renewal every year. It's just automatically renewed. What can you use the funding for? So we help cover things like community participation and activities of daily living. This includes day programs, classes to help learn or build on skills, employment training, including job coaching, recreational activities like gym memberships, museums, festivals, transportation, paying for a support worker to accompany a person into the community, certain technologies such as computers, cell phones, and tablets. We used to cover more technology. That's changed as of April 1st. Some sensory items, but always check with the coordinator first. You can also use it for caregiver respite, which helps provide a break for parents and guardians. Spouses and children are not eligible for caregiver respite, and will help pay for in-home respite, which is when someone comes into the home to give you a break, as well as out-of-home respite, which is when the person goes somewhere to give the parents a break, whether they go to camp or to an agency, that type of thing, for an overnight or just a couple hours. So there's something called person-directed planning, which is you can access through the DSO, and it's a plan that helps identify a person's goals and how to achieve them. So some of these are funded by the ministry, and sometimes you can pay for them. So passport funding will help pay up to $2,500 to help with creating a plan. This funding comes out of a person's budget and not in addition to the budget. So if you have $5,500 as your yearly budget, you can use $2,500 of that for a person-directed plan, which leaves $3,000 for other things. So they can be purchased through independent planners, facilitators, or certain developmental services agency that provide this service. If you're using a broker or a service agency to help manage the funds, then they can charge 10% of a person's budget to help pay for administration fees. This helps with bookkeeping, bankroll, bank fees, payroll, and scheduling support workers. Family members cannot claim this 10% in administration costs. It's only if the person has a registered broker, service agency, or transfer payment agency. It can also be used to pay for some employer costs like CPP contributions and insurance. So what does passport funding not pay for? This is just a small list on our website, which is passportfunding.ca. You'll find a much more in detail list if you look at the guidelines. So we do not pay for home maintenance like shoveling the snow, lawn mowing, gardening, that kind of thing. Furniture, even if it's a desk for the computer that you bought to go on, we will not pay for that. Any clothing, including shoes, toiletries, indirect respite services, things like cooking, cleaning, we will not pay for that. Personal vacations, groceries, restaurant meals, any type of food really. If you go to the movies and get some popcorn, we will not pay for the popcorn, but we'll pay for the movie. Any type of therapy, no speech therapy, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, counseling, social work, psychotherapy, no therapies. No medication, no assistive devices. Tuition for post-secondary education, if it's covered by OSAP, we will not pay for it. If it's not covered by OSAP, then we would pay for it. So usually if you're taking one course, then it would not be covered by OSAP. So we would pay for that. We would just need a letter from the college or university saying that it's not covered by OSAP. And basically anything that can be covered by ODSP or any other kind of funding source is not something that we would cover. So who do you contact if you have a question about passport funding? So everyone who gets passport funding has a passport coordinator. So if you have a question, you would call or email that passport coordinator. We are extremely busy. Our caseloads are very long, so it can take up to 1 week to call back or get back to you. And it's really important if you have any changes to your personal information or banking information that you let your passport coordinator know. So how do you access passport funding? Once you're approved, your passport coordinator will call you or your contact person and let them know that you've been accepted. And they'll also let you know how much funding you've been accepted for. They will then send out an acceptance letter, service agreement, and a whole bunch of forms about who's going to oversee the funding and how you want to be reimbursed. Once you fill out those forms, sign them and send them back to us, then we will do the registration part on our side and send you something called purchase of service forms, which are also invoice forms. So you would send in those forms every time you want to send in an invoice along with a receipt. So some important information. Passport funding can be used by eligible individuals who live in Ontario. So if you move from one part of Ontario to another part, so for example, from Toronto to York region, then your passport funding would be transferred to that region. So you would still access the passport funding. There would be no change. Basically, the only change would be the contact person. Passport One is the organization responsible for processing the invoices. So if they're processing the invoices and there's questions, then they let your passport coordinator know, and then your passport coordinator will get in touch with you, find out the answer, let them know, and send it back. So invoices can be sent in by mail, fax, email, or we now have 2 electronic services, My Direct Plan or eClaim. And then I just have our website there. That's some basic contact information for passport funding. And that is my presentation. Sorry if it was really fast. Ooh, there's a lot of people here now. Okay.
No, it was wonderful. Thank you so much, Erin. So as I mentioned before, just for some new folks who have logged on, that this session is recorded. You're welcome to ask questions. If your preference is to hold tight until the end after the recording has finished, that's okay too. But perhaps I will just take a minute to see if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask Erin about passport.
Yeah, sure. Any questions?
I do see one hand raised. Dina?
Well, I think you're muted.
So I'm not sure, Dina, we can't hear you. Let's try now.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, hi. My question is this similar to special services at home where we get the service and then we submit the receipt, or we can plan what we need to use the money for and then send the receipt, or how does it work?
It's the same as special services at home. Just special services at home ends at 18 and passport funding starts at 18.
I see. One more question. So passport funding, is it the same as the one you said, the DSO or DCO you said?
DSO, Developmental Services Ontario. So you have to be deemed eligible by them before you can apply for passport funding.
Yes, and I'll talk to you guys about that.
I see. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And I think we have another question. So Anar.
Yes, hi. Just a quick question. Once like my daughter is still in school right now, and yes, she is getting passport funding, but I'm thinking that once she's out of school at 21, we may be looking for day programs for her, but my understanding is the cost is quite high, so the 5,500 will not go too far.
Nope.
So I had questions about individualized funding because I think they had said at the beginning, at least that was my impression, that we were supposed to call passport funding when she comes close to finishing school.
So 6 months before she finishes school, call the DSO to update her file.
Okay, and that will go towards maybe determining her individualized funding?
So that will go towards determining how much passport funding she's eligible for, whether or not she's eligible for an increase. Individualized funding, to my knowledge, is something the ministry has talked about, but has not put into place yet.
Oh, I see. Okay. Because I was under impression that there were some parents who were already getting individualized funding.
That I don't know. Definitely not through passport.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions before we turn over to our DSO presenter, Velvet? Okay. Not seeing any. So maybe with that, Velvet, if it's okay, I will pass things over to you.
Yes, absolutely. Hi. I don't think I have the ability to turn on my camera, or I would say hello. It looks like I don't have,
I'm going to try to make you co-host. One moment.
Sure.
Okay, this should give you capabilities to share screen and others as well.
wonderful. Can everybody see my screen?
No.
No? Okay, let me just,
No.
hang on. I just didn't push the go button. Hold on, here we go.
Yes, looks good now.
Wonderful. Okay, hi, everybody.
Perfect.
My name is Velvet. I'm with Developmental Services Ontario, or DSO. Hopefully you can see me now. I've turned on my camera. So I'm with DSO, Developmental Services Ontario, and I work specifically in the Toronto region. There are 9 regions across Ontario, but the one specific to Toronto region is anyone who has a postal code that ends with an M would access services, adult services through Toronto region. And we are the central point of access to get any ministry funded services and supports as an adult. And as Aaron probably talked about, a lot of the things that you're getting as a child are going to end, and you need to apply for adult services. So just a little bit about DSO to talk about eligibility and registration. So who is eligible for DSO? In order to meet DSO's criteria, a person there are 3 main things that they have to have: a developmental disability since birth or that started before age 18. And that means that they have to have significant cognitive and adaptive functioning delays as shown on a psychological assessment. Sometimes we can accept other documents as evidence, but generally that's the document that we're looking for. If you're wondering more specifically about the criteria, this criteria was set by the ministry, and it looks specifically just at those 2 pieces, is the cognitive and the adaptive functioning delay. So we're not looking at a specific diagnosis. Someone might have ASD and might not meet criteria for DSO, or someone might have a physical disability but not a mental or not a developmental disability, or they might have a mental health disability and not a developmental disability. So just keep in mind that there's specific criteria that they have to meet. They also have to be 18, but they can register as early as 16, and they have to be a resident of Ontario. So there's certain documents I've listed here that you can request, or that we would request from you to verify those things. And there's actually 3 ways now that you can register for DSO. One is by phone. So if you call our 855 number, you'll talk to someone from 211. They'll collect just your basic information, and then we'll follow up. One of our intake navigators will follow up with you to request that evidence that I mentioned. You can also now register online. So if you click on the DS Ontario website button, it'll take you to the DS Ontario page, and then you would click on this register. Sorry, is someone asking a question or just not muted?
Hello.
Yeah, feel free to jump in if you have a question.
Sorry, I can ask or no?
Did you have a question?
Yes, please. So we didn't speak English well. So my parents want it should be in Zoom, but they didn't speak English. So, and
Okay.
me, I have a school.
Yes. So if you need help with when you register, when you call our number, 855 number, someone at 211 can speak to you in your language.
Okay.
And then they can tell DSO to call you with an interpreter if you need an interpreter. So they'll let us know if you do need interpretation. And I'll also show you, I'm going to show you a little bit later somewhere on the Surrey Place website that you can get access to information in many languages. So I'll go into that in just a minute, okay?
Okay, please.
All right. So anyone can register on behalf of another person. So if a school person or a social worker or a sibling wants to register on behalf of another person, that's okay. Eventually we will need to collect consent either from the individual or whoever is their substitute decision maker, like a parent. And then once we've gathered that evidence, so once you sent us evidence, an service navigator is going to review the documents that you've sent to us, and they're going to respond within 20 business days. So they're going to let you know if they've decided whether or not that person is eligible for service. And they'll send you a letter of eligibility. Now, in the past, we had been mailing this letter of eligibility, but now because of modern times, we are able to email you that letter instead. And just make sure you hold on to that letter, because you can use it to facilitate your ODSP application later. Because if you are found eligible for DSO, then you will also meet the criteria of having a developmental disability when you're applying for ODSP. You still have to apply, it's a separate application. But you will meet the developmental disability criteria. You still have to also meet the financial criteria for ODSP, but you won't have to prove that you have a disability again. And if you're found ineligible, just please note that you can still apply for ODSP. Some people meet ODSP criteria, but not DSO criteria. So even if you're found not eligible for our service, we encourage you to still apply for ODSP. And just please know that there's also an appeal process if you disagree with our decision, and in the ineligibility letter you can find instructions on how to do that. So if you're found eligible, you then go on to our wait list for what we call the application package. You might also hear it called the DSO needs assessment or the app pack, just the DSO assessment. You'll hear it called a lot of things, and it's the official title for it is the application package. And it's not an actual package. What the application package is a set of meetings that you're going to have with a DSO assessor. The wait time for those meetings to be set up is right now anywhere from 12 to 24 months from when you're found eligible. And this is why applying at 16 is important. So you can apply for DSO even though you can't access adult services until you're 18. You can apply as early as 16, just so that we can get you registered and get you on that wait list for the needs assessment, so that we aim to do that assessment around your 18th birthday, so that you can then be in line for ministry funded services and supports as you become an adult. So we'll make the initial contact for that application package. So just make sure that we have your correct phone number and email address and address, because we're going to be reaching out to you to set those meetings up. There's two parts of the ADSS and the SIS. One part is called the application for developmental services and supports. And that's where we get to know you and get to know what kind of supports you want. So do you want housing? Do you want a day program? Are you interested in specialized services? So we'll get to know and what kind of supports do you already have in place. So we're gathering that information. And then the supports intensity scale, or the SIS, is where we really go into more detail about what your overall needs are. So medical needs, behavioral needs, and then just the general what the level of support is that you need for all areas of life. And there's a video here. I'm going to send a copy of this this presentation so that they can share it with the families that are attending. But if there's a YouTube video attached to that, so you can take a look at it. It just goes into more detail about what is the application package. So the information that we've gathered during the application package is used to help the DSO determine which funded supports an individual wants and needs. And it also prioritizes them for those services appropriately. So it's meant to be only completed one time in your life. But should you have any significant changing needs after being assessed, you can contact the DSO and we can review and update your profile accordingly. So some big changes could be changes in the caregiver's ability to provide support, and finishing school is another big change. So just let us know as these changes happen and we can make sure you're prioritized appropriately for services and waiting for the right services. And the wait times for these ministry funded placements or vacancies can be long. So we encourage people to seek outside resources while you're waiting. So I'll just let you know what sort of ministry funded services there could be. So when you're found eligible and when you turn 18, then you can request these services. So one thing would be specialized services, like if you need behavior therapy, psychology, counseling, audiology, anything like that, you can contact the DSO and we'll forward your request over to Surrey Place, and they can get you in line for those things. Passport funding. So as soon as you're found eligible, and if you're 18, you can request the base amount of passport funding, which right now is $5,500. I'm sure Aaron went into more details about that, but the base amount is that $5,500 for now. And then if you need crisis supports or temporary supports, transitional supports, if you're in any kind of a crisis, you can contact us and we can potentially connect you to an agency called Luminous. They provide those temporary or crisis supports. And you can request an APSW if you're living independently, if you're living on your own, but you might need some supports in getting connected to community resources. An APSW could help you to do that. And once you've had your application package completed, then you can be in line for the rest of these things. So these are wait lists. We're not supposed to say wait lists because they're actually service registries. It's not a wait list where you take a number and when it's your turn, it's your turn. It's a service registry, so we can put you on the registries for these services if you do want to be connected to them. And then we use that information we gathered from the assessment to determine who gets those services first and who needs them the most. And I'll go into detail a little bit more about that in a minute. But those lists that you could be on, those service registries, could be day programs or CPS, community participation supports, we call it. Family support workers. So if you need case management, you can be on the list for that. Person-directed planning, which is where you are connected to an agency who helps you to create a future plan, and then sometimes they'll help you implement it as well if you choose with implementation. And then there's a few different types of housing, but the big ones are supported group living or group home, supported independent living, which is we call a SIL. And group living is where you would get a daily amount of support, and supported independent living is where you would get a weekly amount of support up to 20 hours a week. And then a host family. So that's where you'd be living with a family who cared for you. And then the other big thing is that we send that application package that we've completed to the passport office, and they take that information that we've sent them, and they call it mapping, but they plug all that information in on their side, and then what we've sent them will determine if the person will qualify for additional passport funding beyond that base amount. So the base amount will be $5,500. And then if you have, some people will only ever qualify for that amount. Some people are higher functioning and won't ever need more than that amount. But if you do qualify for more than that $5,500, then you'll go on passport's waitlist for additional funding. And then the ministry will let passport know when they can release that funding. It's all prioritized. So ministry funded placements, I've talked a little bit about this, but once the application package is complete, the assessor will have added the individual to the appropriate service registries, and depending on what you discuss. So some people might not ever want a case manager. That's fine. We won't add you to that list. And if you did want to be added to the list a year later, you can always call us and request that. We can put you on whatever registry you want to be on. And as I had mentioned, we use the information from that assessment that you did to determine your priority for service. Based on your overall needs, based on your circumstances, that's what determines your priority, and also your caregiver's ability to support you. All of that affects your priority. So the service navigators from DSO, we manage those service registries, and if you do come up for a vacancy, we'll contact you to discuss and see if it's a good fit for you. So we're looking at two things. We're trying to get to the people who are the highest priority, but also someone who is the best match for a vacancy. So someone might be top of our list priority wise because they have very high needs, but they might not be suitable for a vacancy that an agency has told us about. So we have to move to so we're looking at that balance of who's the best match for a vacancy, but also who's the highest priority, a balance of those two things. And it's not a time weighted service registry. It's based by needs. So we can't predict when you're going to come up for something. People call all the time, and I know it's an important question to ask. How much longer am I going to be waiting? We don't know, but it is important that you call us, because if you do need a program, we can just review your file with you and make sure that you're waiting for the right things. See if there's anything we can update that might alter your priorities. So just if you're not sure, just give us a call and let us know, and we can just review your file. So resources. There's a few sites, and I did mention one of them, the Surrey Place website is a big one, because from that Surrey Place site, you can access these other sites as well. And I'm not super tech savvy, but I'm going to see if I can click on this and if you will be able to see that website when I click on it. Hopefully so. Great.
Yeah, it looks like it is working.
Wonderful. Okay, so this is the Surrey Place website. This is their main page. And I'll go to the DSO area in a second, but just so you, as I mentioned before, if English is not your first language, you can go to this up here. You can say select language, and you can choose if your first language is Somali, you can say Somali, and the whole website is translated into your language. So you can get this information in your own language. Okay, see if I can switch it back. Okay. So under services, if you go to DSO Toronto, might take a minute here. Oh, we're still in the other language. Okay, here we go. So this is just an overview of things I've already talked to you about DSO, what kind of services and supports we provide. But the big thing to look at here is the resource page. So there's two different pages. One of them is called While You Wait. So that's looking at fee-for-service options while you wait for any ministry-funded options. This will give you links to a whole bunch of different things. Oh, I'm still in another language. Hang on. Sorry. Okay. So these are the two ways that you can contact DSO if you need to review or update your file. And then these are the things that you're eligible for, as I had mentioned before, just an overview of what I already said. And then this is where you can look for supports while you wait. So if you're looking for recreation programs, you can just click on this little plus sign. It gives you an option of a few different places where you can find fee-for-service options. If you're looking for educational opportunities after school, it has a list of different places you can go. Employment supports, if you're trying to find work and need help with that, there's a few different links. And then it goes on. So you can see at a glance what the different kinds of links we have. If you have any questions about these things, you could just go contact those places directly to find out more information. And then another big thing is, I think respite's a big deal right now. People are having trouble finding respite. If you were needing help finding staffing services, there's a list of staffing services here. This CHAP program is not actually in service right now. So just disregard that. I don't know how many people know about this, but Respite Services is no longer providing respite supports in Toronto. So people are really having to, you can still go to their website and they still have links to helpful resources, but they don't provide the actual support in helping you find the respite. And Geneva is taking over that respite support for folks who have autism. Yes, so we have this whole site, and under helpful resources, if you're on that page, it links you to the DSO Toronto Facebook group, which is another really great resource I find. So anytime agencies in Toronto send us information about supports, we post it up here. So it's very random what is in here, but if you're just looking for information in general, if you're trying to find camps, if you're trying to find an art class, if you're just trying to find any kind of activity, it's a good place to start. And this has some of these are sort of time sensitive. So like this one, for example, is July 4th to July 7th. There's a music and culture summer experience happening with the village. And it tells you how much it costs. If there is a cost, this camp is hiring. So, and in general, anytime we get these emails from agencies, and they don't have to be ministry agencies, sometimes they're private agencies or private companies who provides supports. Sometimes they're posting on here as well. So it's a great resource if you don't already have, or if you do have Facebook, then you can find that link on the Surrey Place page. And the other page is, if we go back to this DSO page and you click on support for community participation. This is our, it's still translating, sorry. This is our list of ministry funded agencies that provide day programs. And a lot of these programs are also, you can access them fee for service if you don't want to wait for a ministry funded spot. So it's helpful to even know which agencies are out there, which ones provide the amount of support that you might need, and what is the cost if you are looking to pay fee for service. But you could click on the plus sign on any of these and it gives you a description. So for Addis, this is their website, that's their phone number. These are the 3 locations of Addis. And then it tells you what the staffing level is, who it's a good fit for, who it's not right for, and so on and so forth. So you can look at this and see what's in your area and if any of these are potential good options. So just know if you are connected to DSO, if you've had your assessment, and if you're on the wait list for, we call it CPS, then you're already waiting for all of these, even though you might not maybe be suitable for a Bob Rumble program. We're not going to put you forward for it because we're looking also not just at priority, but for who's a good match. But just so you know, you don't have to call us to specifically request one of these programs. Just know that if you're waiting for CPS with us, then you're already waiting for these things. But they do have fee for service options, most of them, so you can contact them directly. And then there's these 2 websites, My Community Hub and Connectability, and they are both they both list all of the fee for service things in Toronto, but also in Ontario. So if you're looking for something, maybe I can just share quickly on Connectability. They have a list of different resource directories. And then the big one, this one, fee for service program directory. If you click there, you can see some private agencies that have different supports happening, and you can narrow your search down if you're looking for something specific, and they'll give you more information on their own website. Okay, let's see if I can get back. Oh, there we go. So the other thing that you could be connected to is person directed planning, which I mentioned. And so there's a few different agencies that offer person directed planning fee for service. And I think, Aaron, that you can use your passport funding up to $2,500 of your passport funding can go towards person directed planning. There is also ministry funded PDP if you wanted to be on the wait list for that. But there's no predicting when that's going to come up. So if you're not using your funding for anything else, and maybe you're finishing school and you have no idea where to go or where to find services, it might be a good idea just to contact one of these agencies directly and ask them about their person directed planning. And then also Surrey Place has a adult resource day every month, and you have to contact Surrey Place adult team to find out when the next one is. They usually have a calendar, but their calendar is not working right now. So you just need to contact Surrey Place adult team and ask when the next resource day is. But that's where you would have a one-to-one call or meeting with Surrey Place adult worker who can help you look for resources if you're looking for resources. Okay, so if you need to contact DSO if you do have any change in your phone number or address, if you have any changes to your caregiver's ability to support, of course, any significant changes to the individual's needs, if you've lost a program, if you're finishing school, if you want to discuss your services and supports. If you're not sure, I feel like a lot of people get assessed when they're 18 and then 3 years go by and nothing happens. And then suddenly you're finishing school and you don't even know what you're waiting for anymore. So if you're in that position, feel free to reach out and we can review what's on your file and what you're waiting for. And if you're approaching crisis, of course, give us a call and we'll see where we can provide supports. And like I said, you can call our 855 number and it's answered by 211 and it's answered 24 hours a day and 7 days a week in multiple languages. So anytime you reach out, you can leave a message, and what 211 does, they essentially take a detailed message and they send it to the intake, to the service navigators at DSO, and then we respond from there. And we work generally 9 to 5. But yes, you can call them anytime. If you don't have time in the daytime and you want to call at night and then tell us when to call, you can also do that. And you can also email us and just say, hey, I'm checking on where my son, what my son's waiting for, or am I on the wait list for programming? Whatever you need to do, you can call us there. Okay. And that's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I'll stop.
Thank you
sharing.
so much, Velvet. That was wonderful. I do
Yeah.
see a hand up. So Dina.
Yes, hi. My question is, does the passport funding has an age limit like special services at home?
No, you can have
Okay.
passport until, or sorry, you can start getting passport as early as 18, and it stays with you until you pass away. Essentially, it's ongoing.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Good question. Anar?
Yes, hi. It's Velvet, right?
Yes.
So I had asked Erin the same question. So I have a daughter who is 18 right now. She has another 2 years to go before she finishes high school. And the amount of passport funding right now is 5,500 that we are getting. However, when the school finishes, we were thinking of day program for her, but my understanding is the cost is quite high. So we would possibly need like a reassessment of her passport funding. So what is the process and what are some of the things that you look at to determine how much of an individual is supposed to get?
Well, and the way the ministry has designed this is essentially that passport and DSO, that we're both blind on both sides, so that we're assessing people fairly. And what happens is DSO collects the information for people, and then passport just processes that information. So passport on their end has no ability to alter how much funding someone gets. It's all decided by the assessment or by the information that the DSO is passing to them. So what I would do is encourage, if you are worried about how much funding you're going to have when she finishes school, make sure you give us a call. And I usually tell families to make sure they call us a couple of months, usually January or February of when they're going to graduate. And so that we can review the file, we can update it and send those updates to the passport office and see if that affects your priority for that additional funding. Because have you had your DSO assessment already, your DSO needs assessment?
Yes.
Yeah, so probably your child is what we call funded and waiting. So funded with that 5,500, waiting for an additional amount. And what's missing right now is the prioritization for her to get that funding. So we want to make sure that we send an update to passport so that they have something to check on. So they would review your file and see if, based on the changes DSO sent, if now your prioritization will increase enough to release that extra funding to you. And it's not always immediate. It's not always, not everybody who finishes school is going to get their additional funding automatically. And it's not up to passport. It's really up to the ministry is making those decisions on when to release funding to people. So they're releasing based on priority. So but the key thing to know is to contact DSO, and that DSO can review your file and make sure it's as accurate as possible and send updates to passport to be remapped to see if that priority increases.
Okay, and I had also asked a question on individualized funding because in the certain forums that I've been attending, there are parents who are getting individualized funding. Do you have any information on that at all?
No, and it's not something that is even really given out these days. Really, there's only passport funding, and maybe what they're referring to is that additional amount of passport funding that they're approved for. So beyond the 5,500. I believe the maximum amount of passport funding someone can get is $45,000 a year. So they might have been already approved for that additional amount. Maybe their overall needs or their circumstance has made them a high enough priority that the ministry has said, yes, they can have their additional funding. So that might be what they're referring to when they say their individualized funding. I think maybe they're just talking about that additional funding that they're getting based on their assessment that they did.
Okay, and when they're making this assessment, so obviously it's DSO that's making the assessment, is it based on the previous assessment that we got done initially? Like, is it based on the support intensity scale?
Yep, so that's what they're using, those documents to determine how much funding someone will get. So your child might already be waiting for, and I'm just throwing a random number out there, might be waiting for $30,000 a year, but you're not going to get that until the ministry has said, okay, we're going to approve people in such and such priority range. So the only way to have passport review it in any way is for DSO to give them new information. So sometimes we can update that information. The information might affect the priority enough that passport can then say, okay, we can release that amount you're waiting for.
Okay, and how would I go around? I guess I would have to call DSO to find out if she's even on the I'm not sure if it's priority listing, but I don't know what term to use, but if she is on like I actually do not remember if we had asked for personal directed planning when we had done the DSO. So would I have to call them to find out if she is?
Yeah, you can call us or you can email us, whatever's easier, and just give them your child's name and just let them know what your question is. And in your case, it sounds like maybe it would be good if you just called and spoke to a service navigator and just say you want to discuss, say your child is finishing school and you're wanting to talk about programming, and they can give you some options.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you suggested going through the Surrey Place website to look at programming. So that would be a good idea to do before she finishes school?
Yeah, I think it's good because sometimes, just as an example, a private program that I know of, and it's in the West, but it's called LUSO, and it supports people with higher needs, and they are fee for service and they're private, but they have a wait list, and I don't know how long that wait list is, but if it's 1 or 2 years, and your daughter or son is finishing school within 1 or 2 years, it doesn't hurt to get on the wait list for that program. So it is good to research ahead of time, especially if you're thinking that you're going to be looking at fee for service options using your passport funding rather than getting into a funded spot, because the odds of getting a funded placement are just not very high these days. They don't come up often, and there's a lot of people waiting. So it's really good to be planning outside of that.
Now, if you are in a fee for service funding day program that you have started with, and then let's say the spot opens for the funded spot, can you switch? How does that work?
You can't switch, but sometimes the agency could let us know, because what happens when a vacancy is declared, so the agency has to declare a vacancy when one happens. And then we have to go through our normal matching and linking process. So we do have to see if there are other people that are a higher priority to get that spot before you. But potentially, if you're in that same range of priority need as maybe someone else who we might be considering, we'd be happy to consider you for that spot. And agencies usually can help us with that. They can say, oh, so and so is paying fee for service. Can you check if they're a good priority? for this spot. So sometimes we can do that. But we do have to look at everybody's, to be fair, we have to look at everybody who's waiting to see if there's not someone higher priority at the time. But it doesn't affect, if you're in a fee for service spot, it's not going to affect your priority to get a funded spot anywhere.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. It's a little bit complicated system, and I guess it's
Yeah.
kind of to
It's
grapple.
very complicated because I think at Surrey Place, all of their services are a wait list, and they can tell you, okay, you're number 900 on a list of 4,000. We don't have that. We can say our service registry has 5,000 people on it for CPS. But it's not time weighted list. It's needs based. So we're looking at the highest priority people first.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, I feel like we're
Great
going for a
questions.
little
Thank
time
you
right
so
now.
much.
I don't know.
No, I think it's so good. I just want to note, I think there's a question. Oh, yes, thank you. So Karen just noted in the chat, just that people can wait for different programs. So thank you for that. Just being mindful of time, and I do want to provide just a couple minutes of opportunity off of the recording to, if anyone has questions that they want to ask outside of the recording. Just before I do end the recording, I just want to note again, just our gratitude to TD Bank Group that has helped our collaboration with Easter Seals Ontario for this financial literacy program that helps to remove barriers to financial planning and security for Easter Seals participants. And so I will stop the recording.